Today's date is January 18th, 2021. Welcome to Crystals 101. It's going to be crystals and rocks and minerals and ores and some other stuff because I just could not help myself. So this is the first day of the first semester of 2021 in the Urban Conservatory Discord server. We provide witchcraft and pagan and esoteric and occult courses for free. If anybody approaches you and says, "I want money," don't give them any and let a member of staff know, please. Alright, everybody shows that. They're talking about, if you're taking this for attendance, for your focus, after the presentation is over, let me know so that I can mark you present. Welcome to Crystals. Your outside life comes first. If at any point something comes up and you're like, oh no, I have a terrible decision to make. Do I go to class or do I take care of whatever issue it is? Take care of the issue. Absolutely. Take care of the issue. The materials from this course are extra. You will get out of this class what you put into it. But that said, don't put so much into it that you deprive other areas of your existence, please. And a real quick note, this particular image that you're looking at, very pretty, right? And that chunk of partially burned wood, that's Palo Santo. If you already own Palo Santo, you could attempt to donate it somewhere, or you could use it extremely sparingly, but please do not going forward buy Palo Santo. It's endangered, and the native and the indigenous folks who use Palo Santo, because it got so popular in New Age circles, they can't get a hold of it. So it's just a note about this image. Alright, so I'm Jennifer. What up, y'all? I have been doing witchcraft and witchy things for a very, very long time. I feel old some days, and in other ways, I don't feel very old at all. I don't think that I'm mentally as old as my physical body is. But I'm pretty old. I'm 44 years old. I started practicing witchcraft and neo-pagan stuff in 1996. It was my first semester in college, the spring semester. And the fall semester was rough. Which is, most people get involved in alternative spiritualities after an awakening of some form. That was me. I got involved with my local Pagan Student Association. So it was the Pagan Student Association of Texas A&M University. And through that, I wound up holding literally every office that they had. President, co-chair, a librarian, a social chair. Everything. I was everything. So I've run public rituals. I put together for Halloween, we did a witches ball, including having vendors, so that was fun. With a roommate of mine, who's also witchy, we started Texas's the very first public radio show in Texas devoted to paganism and witchcraft. It was called The Spiral Dance, and it was on KEOS 89.1 FM in College Station, Texas. Even all these years later, I still know the call sign. So I've been doing this for a while, and it's been an awful lot of fun, and I love all of this. I've worked at various witchy rock shops and little incense stores, and it's fantastic. I love all of this stuff. I want you to feel like you can approach me with your questions or concerns. If there's anything at all that you're like, but what about? Come and ask, either in the class channel or by DMing me. Either way, if you want it to be private, that's cool. If you want it to be in public, all right, let's do that too. It's all good. I've worked in, fine jewelry. My rock collection is measured in pounds, and I have a lot of jewelry. Maybe one of these days I'll take a picture of it and show you. In the chat, they're asking about the wood. It was called, hey, I have to select that. Palo Santo was the name of it. Don't buy it. It's endangered. Technically, you're not supposed to cut or burn the wood until it has lain like a fallen tree. You don't chop the tree down. You're not supposed to. No. And it's supposed to be fallen and late and dry naturally in the sun for 10 years before you can harvest that wood and use it, which is part of why it's really hard to get a hold of. So don't use Palo Santo. I am asexual, I am aromantic, and I am agender. I am in a female body that I don't feel any particular need to do anything about. It's just kind of there, and I'm white. Very, very white. I've studied Tibetan Buddhism, meditation, altered states of consciousness, witchcraft, tarot, divination, crystals and rocks. I'm a Libra. My rising is Sagittarius. I have 4 dogs, 3 cats. You will probably hear them at some point, because they're not quiet. I cook, I bake, I'm an artist, I paint, I draw, I sculpt, I make mixed media messes. It's fabulous. One of my current things I'm going to be working on and trying to run myself through, I want to use my art as a way to explore the runes. So I'm going to be drawing them and working with them and exploring them through my artwork. You will see pictures of the stuff that I draw and paint occasionally in the server as well. The chat, Gandalf McGee points out, it's illegal to chop the tree, but because of people being so eager to buy it, there are a lot of people who go out there and chop it illegally. So, that stinks. You can probably hear the fan on my computer just kicked in. Let me know if that is bothersome and I can just make my computer overheat. Yeah, it's all over Etsy for really cheap prices, which tells you things about it. So let's talk about the history of crystals. This slide, you see, that is the Venus of Willendorf. It's one of the oldest carved images of what we assume to be a goddess or fertility figure. Crystals and rocks and stuff have been around for as long as humans have. The history of crystals is the history of humanity in a lot of ways. As soon as we stood upright and looked around, we looked and started using tools, we picked up crystals. We picked up chert, and we picked up flint. And that was our first tools. When you see pictures of arrowheads, right, and they've been flint napped, flint is a stone. It's an amorphous stone, which means the crystal structure isn't regular. That's why when you smack flint with a harder rock, like a metamorphic rock instead of... Anyway, you smack it and bits flake off and the edges are incredibly sharp. So our first hand axes, our first arrows, our first tools, and our first weapons were stones. That's why it's called the Stone Age. But at the same time we picked up rocks to make tools and weapons, we also made art with them. Ores and pretty rocks, we decorated ourselves, our spaces, our gods, our goddesses. Paleolithic and Neolithic cave paintings were made by taking highly pigmented ores, So mud off the riverbank or soft, crumbly iron ore dug out of the ground, crushed into a paste, add water, it's paint. We tattooed ourselves. We took these ores that we had smeared across the walls and we put it into our skin. We made it a part of ourselves. Crystals and rocks have been with us forever. They're an intrinsic part of what it means to be a human. The word crystal comes from the Greek kristallos. It means coldness drawn together, or ice. And it's talking specifically about quartz crystals. They called it ice because it looks like ice. It's ice that never melts. So any faceted stone that shines and sparkles is a crystal. But there are stones that we would call a crystal that doesn't shine and doesn't sparkle. There's some versions of quartz, like a milk quartz, for example. It's white instead of clear. Translucent rather than transparent, but it's still a quartz. Oh, Sabir says, before I knew that it was endangered, I bought Palo Santo in a herb kit. It's super common. Pardon me while I drink. When it comes to things like that, once you've got it, keep it. The energy of the thing that has come to you, guard it until you can find where it's meant to go. You might run into somebody who says, yeah, my family's from, down where the Palo Santo comes and we can't get a hold of it and we need it for a religious rite. Ah, there you go. Here, have some. I have some. Yeah, Althea says you can always bury it. You can return it to the earth. You can donate it to indigenous groups. You can give it away. You can keep it until you know where it's supposed to go. Don't waste it. Okay, the breastplate. The breastplate of the high priest. This one gets mentioned a whole lot. It comes from the Old Testament and also from the Tanakh, which is one of the Jewish texts alongside the Talmud. The breastplate of the high priest had 12 different gemstones that were named in it. Some of the names that were used for the 12 gemstones in the breastplate of the high priest, it was Aaron, by the way, was the name of the high priest. Some of those names don't correspond to what we know nowadays as a stone. So some of these stone names were like, I don't know what that was. We have guesses about what exactly all 12 stones were. I know that garnet was definitely in the breastplate. Emerald was in the breastplate. Sapphire in the breastplate. Some of the other ones might have been chalcopyrite or chalcedony or any number of other things we don't know. The breastplate of the high priest had the gemstones in it because it was a symbolic representation of one of the seals. And Aaron, by the way, predates Solomon. So it's not the seal of Solomon that was on the breastplate of the high priest. It's something else. We don't know. No images survived. No pictures. No drawings. We just know that we have this list of the 12 stones that were in the breastplate, and we guess about what some of those stones were. We don't know. So, Neolithic burial sites, that's even further back. I'm like moving backwards in history. Feature early hominids, so even before we were human. Back up the evolutionary tree, you go back far enough, we've got Australopithecine, which is, that's really, really early. Even Homo habilis or Homo erectus, which is closer to us, Homo sapiens sapien. Even Australopithecine burials had flowers and had pretty rocks and stones. We know that by the time we get to Homo habilis, habilis means handy, they were making or starting to make tools or using found objects as tools. Let me pop in here and answer this question. Yes, there are notes in the classroom. Flowers, pretty stones, pretty rocks, crystals, and beads, which means either they took a found stone that had a hole through it, a hagstone, or they drilled a hole through a pretty rock so that they could slide a leather strip through there and tie it to themselves as jewelry. Mystic rocks. The association with magic in particular for crystals and stones. Always. As far as we can tell, the Neolithic and Paleolithic cave paintings and cave drawings were a type of magic, we're pretty sure, and or worship, or at least an act of reverence, which is a kind of worship. So those ores became sacred because they were being used to create the sacred art. We know that crystals and gemstones were very highly prized because there were wars fought over them. People have fought over gold. Gold is an ore for as soon as we picked it up. The reason people would fight over things like gold and the precious gemstones in particular is because they're incredibly rare and their properties marked them out as being special. When it comes to the metallic ores, copper, silver, lead, tin, and gold. Gold is different from the other ones. Gold warms up to your body temperature very quickly and then holds your heat. The other metals take longer to warm up. They don't absorb your body heat as fast. Gold feels like it's alive. If I take a gold ring off of my hand and hand it to you, it will still feel as warm as my hand. I mean, my hand's not that warm, but, you get the picture. Not during the class, please. Cyber was asking if they could send pictures. Not right now. You're going to bury the chat and I need to see it. So the precious stones, the reason why those were valued more highly than semi-precious stones. The precious, there's 4 of them. Diamond, ruby, emerald, and sapphire. And the reason those are valued are because they're the hardest of the stones. Nothing can cut a diamond but another diamond. Period. On the Mohs hardness scale, a diamond is a 10. The other 3 stones, ruby, emerald, and sapphire, are a 9 on the hardness scale. They can be cut by a diamond or themselves, but nothing else. All the other gemstones and crystals that we value and love so much are much, much softer, and in some cases, really soft. There's a mineral, chalk. Chalk is a mineral. Talc is a mineral. It is naturally occurring. It is mined out of the earth. It has a hardness of 1. It's very soft. String of symbols asks if you've ever seen a water saw. Water can cut diamond. This is, we're talking about so far back in history, they didn't have water saws. So yes, water, if properly pressurized, can cut diamond. Water can cut anything. Kabusto asks, are there differences in the hardness between synthetic precious stones and naturally occurring ones? Nope. A synthetic diamond has a hardness of 9.5. So close. We're so close. But synthetic rubies, emeralds, and sapphires have a hardness of 9. It's just something about the diamond. And I may need to research and fact check myself. So I'm going to remind myself to do that. Because there was a breakthrough that I vaguely glanced at about 5 years ago about making synthetic diamonds, so they may have upped their game and gone all the way to a 10. Yes. Borg says, is it because the crystalline structure is the same whether it's naturally occurring or synthetic, barring any inclusions or defects? Uh-huh. Yes, it's the crystalline structure that gives it its strength. Oh, fun fact. I prefer synthetic diamonds, rubies, and sapphires because we can make them any color you want. How fun is that? And I'm skipping ahead, like 4 lessons. Rubies, sapphires, and emeralds are all beryls. They're all the same basic stone. They're just different colors with slightly different, like the inclusions matter a whole lot. And emeralds, the stone itself is very, very hard. But because every single natural emerald is highly, highly included, the stone itself becomes very fragile. It will break along those inclusion faults. If you've looked at an emerald, it looks cloudy. It's cloudy because it's got all those inclusions in it. So if you take an emerald ring to a jeweler and you say, can you clean this please? And they take it from you and drop it into an ultrasonic, take it right back because that's going to crack the stone. Whee! I know too much. Our recent history is also all about the mystic uses of crystals and gemstones. Like, there's a lot. There's so much. Oh, Cab says it may be due to a minuscule amount of added elements in synthetic diamonds. It makes them easier to make, but slightly different properties. The main problem is, or at least the main problem was, pending research, that building a pressurized container in which to, because it takes immense pressure to create a diamond, like so much pressure, building the pressure chamber was a problem. All right, recent history. John Dee in the 1500s, right? That's how recent, because before now, I've been talking about stuff in the, the closest to recent history I got was the bit about the breastplate of Aaron, the breastplate of the high priest, and that was in about 7,000 years ago. No, not 7. My math is wrong. 5,000 years ago. So, in the 1500s, we've got John Dee, who comes along, and he's Queen Elizabeth's head sorcerer. He does all sorts of stuff. We know we valued precious ores and gemstones. We valued all of them. We even valued pretty cut glass by this point in time. All of it contained mystical properties. If you look at the history of alchemy, it's all about turning lead into gold. There's a reason why I'm also talking about ores. The process for turning lead into ore often involved taking very, very expensive gemstones and grinding them up. Alchemy, man. Who knows? Let's flash forward. Helena Blavatsky and the rise of Theosophy. This is in the 1800s, which gave rise to the Ordo Templi Orientalis, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and eventually Thelema, which eventually gave rise to Gerald Gardner in the 1950s and Wicca. Whew. See, I told you I'd get you up to recent history. In the 70s, with the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and I will not sing the song, you're welcome. However, I'm going to yell at the cat to get off the counter. Get off the counter. Thank you. Lord. History, man. There's so much history. To go into it in depth, Lordy, that would take forever. Saber says, at that point, the pressure chamber for the diamond can become a bomb. Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah, that was the main problem. They tended to blow up. Whoops. And there goes the dog. I told you you'd hear from them eventually. With the rise of spiritualism in the 1800s, okay, that's Helena Blavatsky, and then the New Age in the mid-1900s, woohoo, crystal crunchers became real popular. That's when all of this stuff really took off. The Summer of Love. Everybody had a pet rock. They had little crystals, and they would wear them in their hair and dangle them out of trees, and it was wildness. Wildness. That's all recent stuff. So I will be frank that most of the books you're going to pick up and read about what's the correspondences for this stone. Some of what we know is hearkening back to medieval sources. John Dee, for example. Most of what you're going to get when you open up a book that says, I'm going to tell you all about the angelic presence found within hematite. That is really modern. That's within the last 70 years or so. That's hyper modern. That's not wild, ancient, esoteric knowledge being handed down. Some of it is. Most of it isn't. Especially if you're looking at one of the more recently discovered gemstones. Incredibly popular right now, Moldavite. Everybody wants a chunk of Moldavite. Moldavite is a meteor landed. Oh, my brain just completely forgot the name of the nation it landed in. Moldavia? A meteor landed. On impact, it basically glassified the ground that it impacted into, and that is Moldavite. It's a green, glassy-looking mineral. Similar to obsidian, in that obsidian is also what happens when you melt rock. Germany. Thank you. Moldavite, super duper popular. But every single thing that you read about, this is the properties of Moldavite, that's modern. Hyper modern. Extremely modern. That's not ancient received knowledge. Kabustu said, when it comes to gemstone associations, I only trust children's books that have rhyming prophecies in them. That's one way to do it, but yes. So, the technical term for what Moldavite would be is a tektite. I have a few tektites in my collection because I'm a nerd. A tektite, there's a little bit of dispute about exactly what a tektite is. It is either a meteor that landed and into the earth and then cooled, and now we can pick it up and it's a rock. Or that's where the meteorite hit and it melted the soil around it and the dirt and the rock and everything into a tektite. So, either way, a meteorite caused that. It's called a tektite. Tekite. Tektite. I left a T out. Tektite. 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 God. It's fun to say and hard to spell. Tektite. Let's see. Oh. So, the chat is asking, what is ancient knowledge, and how do we find ancient knowledge on crystals? And does Moldavite, in particular, have any historical meanings as well? Or are the meanings only modern? On the one hand, it doesn't matter. Because when you're using a stone and using a crystal, your belief is that's the line. That's the line in the sand. If you believe that's what that stone does, that's what that stone does. On the other hand, make friends with a librarian, because you're going to be spending a lot of time using interlibrary loan to attempt to get a hold of copies of translations of ancient source texts. It's a labor of love, and if this is the route you want to go, awesome. That's so cool. I use a few source books for stone meanings that seem appropriate to me. And part of why I have such a huge collection is because I went for a variety of stones. So I could hold them in my hand and feel the energy of them and decide for myself. I never use just one source for any piece of information or knowledge or any correspondence. I look up a whole bunch. There are a few books. Cunningham's Encyclopedia, honestly, is a good source. He researched well. He researched really well, and I have mad respect for Mr. Cunningham. I also have Love is in the Earth, a kaleidoscopic pictorial of crystals by Melody. You can't find that book. I'm sorry. It's out of print. You might be able to pick up a copy from a used bookstore, possibly thrift books. It's hard to get a hold of. It's really hard to find. But there are... Okay, so I have the pictorial and I have the main source book. The main book has no pictures, and it is over 500 pages. It's great. The first one is Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Crystal Gem and Metal Magic. Magic. And we do have a copy of it in the library. Yeah. Kabusto says, apparently Agrippa, major disseminator of historical occult stuff, literally says in his 3 books on occult philosophy that his associations for some gems are based on their color alone. Like moonstone, it's named for its milky white color that resembles the appearance of the moon. Yep. A lot of it is based on the color of it, and randomly assigned to a planet. Like, if it's red, it's probably associated with Mars. It's that level. Alright. Oh. Okay, so the slide that I've been stuck on here. Point 2. Marble, granite, feldspar, and stucco. The choice of building material can be influenced by esoteric knowledge. The most glaring and obvious example of this. Look at an overhead satellite image of Washington, D.C. Look at where the clock towers are. Look where the major buildings are. Look at where any fountains are located. And if you know anything at all about a Masonic temple, which Masons or Freemasons, whole nother subject, okay? And I'm getting a little bit weird here, but this is why I wanted to say it. Masons and Freemasons would do esoteric rituals, and the Freemasons influenced the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. The founders of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, were Masons. There's a link. So, the physical layout of a Masonic altar can be superimposed over the positions of buildings and roads in Washington, D.C. The materials chosen to build the buildings out of have meaning as well, and I'm going to let you go down that rabbit hole and research it because it's fascinating. Thank you. Orion says, or Kabusto said the Temple of Solomon too, and then Orion put in a little picture. And Sabir says, my grandpa was a Freemason. My dad's a Grand Master Mason. Both of my grandfathers were Grand Master Masons. All 4 of my great-grandfathers were Grand Master Masons. All 8 of my great-great-grandfathers were Grand Master Masons. All of my uncles are Grand Master Masons. There's a few. There's a little influence. There's a little bit in there. Tiny bit. Hardly worth noting. Barely any. Kabusto says, are Freemasons the origin of the term craft in reference to occult stuffs? Yes. The work of the Freemasons was to build the temple. And they were talking about on an energetic, esoteric level. They were building an energetic temple. And their craft originally was to cut stone. That's why they're called a Freemason. Freemasons built the pyramids. Freemasons built the Sphinx. Freemasons, and they're called free because they were not enslaved. Their level of skill with cutting stone and moving stone and doing all of this stuff was so great. Were the DC streets designed with the devil in mind, says this link. No. Wrong devil, wrong religion. So the Freemasons were free Masons who were so good at doing the math and cutting the stones so that they would fit together properly. Like, that's why they were free. They were like, I'm not going to do this if you keep me as a slave, so good luck building your giant mausoleum. So they were freed. Anyway, that's all wild tangent. But their use of stones and their use of crystals and their ability to cut stone and cut gems is legendary. They don't actually cut stone anymore. Like, my dad was a respiratory therapist, you know? He wasn't actually a mason. He was just a mason. Person says, the streets are in the shape of a star. Definitely means the devil. No. It's a Freemason star. It's a different star. Wrong religion. Can you condition any rock or even wood to be just as effective as a crystal? Yes. There you go. That's the answer to that. Okay, so this is the syllabus for this course. This is everything I'm gonna teach you. Oh, what do Freemasons do now? They get together and mostly they raise funds to, like, build a park or put, like, a swing set into a park or a basketball court. Like, they're very community-minded because a large chunk of what the Masons do is it's building the temple, and that requires that they bring their work into the world as well. So it's a fraternal order. They do community-minded stuff mostly, and then they do their secret rituals off in the back, but, you know, that's for them to do and enjoy. Cab says, I believe that Freemasons draw their lineage, at least from their legends and myths, as descended from the builders of the Temple of Solomon, where they cut gems for the priests, using a magical tool or being called a samur. Yeah. Yep. It's fascinating stuff. It's really, really interesting. Like, and you can study all this stuff for, like, hours and just, you know, burn your eyes out on the internet because what? Conspiracy theories. In reality, Masons mostly get together. Like, I remember my great uncle Johnny was really high up in the Texas Freemasons, and I distinctly remember going to an ice cream social with the Masons and eating my body weight in ice cream while sitting on his lap, while all the other Masons would come by and be like, sir, and, like, kiss the ring on his hand. It was weird. But I didn't care. I had as much ice cream as I could eat. So, Masons aren't that scary. They're not bad. Ivy says they don't accept females. Some temples do now. And there is a sorority associated with the Freemasons called the Eastern Star that is for women. Ask me how many of my aunts were members of the Eastern Star. All of them. So this is lesson number 1. This is the introduction, where I talk about me, I talk about the course, and a little bit of the history, because it's wild. Lesson number 2 is going to be ethics. We're going to talk about where do you get your stones, how do you get your stones, and the ethics of collecting crystals. Lesson number 3, care in feeding. Now that you've got your crystals, How are you taking care of them? This requires that you know what you have so you know what it needs. And by needs, I mean some stones are UV reactive. If you leave your pretty rose quartz on your windowsill, it won't be rose quartz for long. You're gonna bleach it. And also how to cleanse your stones, because some stones are water soluble. So if you wash some rocks, you'll melt them. And some will react to salt. So if you try to do a salt cleanse, you'll mess up your rock. We're going to go over the basics of how to identify the stones that you have. A needed thing. Speaking of, if you have stones, you're like, what is this? Go to the Google Classroom. I've already uploaded reference sheets in the Google Classroom. There is a link to a Google Drive folder that contains high resolution, really big PNGs, images with labeled examples of a whole bunch of stones. That should help. My tablet's like, oh, you're talking to me? Stop that. We're also going to talk about basic crystals. Quartz and agate are the two most common stones on the face of the earth, and we're going to talk about them in depth because they're cool. We're going to talk about crystal grids. They're used for healing and moving and channeling energy. Think of them as a sigil that you build out of stones. We're going to talk about crystal divination, and then we're going to talk about rocks. Your common everyday rock. What is in your backyard? Because trust me, it's just as magical as anything you bought in an Etsy store or the little witchy shop downtown. Yas? Yas. And then they're talking about Masons being mostly men. Yeah. They're crazy. Morg says, one of my favorite meditation stones is just plain granite. Granite is amazing. The Texas State Stone is petrified wood, but the Texas State Capitol is made out of pink granite, which is a native granite to the state of Texas and was quarried not far from where the Capitol sits. Also, the energy of it is so good. And yes, the building is pink. It's awesome. I love it. The Texas State Capitol is literally pink. And Althea said, I don't remember what was said. How do we make sure we're marked down for attendance? Okay, so if you attend the live course, and you're in the chat room while this is going on, send me a message after I'm done recording saying, hey, I was here, and then I'll mark you down. If you aren't able to attend the live class, that's perfectly fine. That's sweet, cool, awesome. Listen to the recording, watch the video, read the notes. Prepare for me a summary. 150 to 300 words, and it can be in bullet points. Notes, even, about what you think I just said. Go nuts. 150 to 300 words in a shareable Google Doc, and send that to me via DM on the Discord server. And I will say, oh, okay, you attended the course by not attending the course. Don't do it all in 1 week, because we will be checking in at the halfway point in the semester, and if you were not on point, like if you're trying to save all of this to the very end, it's gonna suck, because lessons 2 through 8 all have exercises to do, and if you're taking this for your focus, you have to do the exercises. Sorry. If you're not taking this for your exercise, for a focus, you can still do the exercises, and I recommend that you do. You'll get a lot out of them. All right. Oh, and can anything be found in the mid-city? All I see is pavement. You will be amazed what concrete's made out of. Here are references. So the last slide contains my references. There's a couple of links. There's a Stanford link. There's a Gemological Society link, and some books. The Crystal Wisdom book, Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Crystal Gem and Metal Magic, and Love is in the Earth, a Kaleidoscope of Crystals. Those are the 3 big books that I use when I'm looking at rocks and stones and doing stuff with them. San says, do the exercises require spending money on stuff? No. Aggressively, no, they do not. Absolutely not. You don't have to spend any money on any of these exercises. None of that. Nope. Nope. Whew. Good night. All right, any questions? I've been trying to keep up with questions as I went through here. Sabir says, what is concrete made out of? Concrete is a Roman invention, and it took a very long time before we figured out how Roman roads lasted as long as they did. It's because they were made out of concrete. It is tiny stones and rocks mixed with a binding agent. And for the longest time, we had no idea what their binding agent was. And eventually we figured it out, that part of it involved seawater for the salt. Ooh, Morg says, highly recommend the book Stuff Matters by Mark Miałownik. Miałownik? Not sure how to pronounce that. For a super down-to-earth engineer's perspective on a bunch of materials ranging from concrete to chocolate. They read it for an engineering course. That's awesome. I know. I didn't think it was going to take a whole hour. Whoops. Sorry. Can I repeat how I'd like you to confirm attendance? Send me a DM after the class if you're in the live class so that I can be like, oh, look, there you are. Because if you send it to me right now or if you send it in the class chat, I won't see that. You see how fast this stuff is moving? It'll get lost. It'll get buried. Or if you have to take this asynchronously, I drank all my water and I'm getting dry. Go over the class notes and the presentation and write a summary, 150 to 300 words. I'm not trying to make this hard, right? Like that's short. It's half a page. You can do that. 150 to 300 words in a shareable Google Doc and send it to me so that I know you did pay some attention to the information I was imparting. The Google Classroom has this presentation as well as written notes that are far more extensive than what was visible in the presentation, so that if you do better with stuff that's written down, I have a written version for you. If you do better with things that are spoken, you can listen to this recording. If you need a combination, you can watch. I'm about to make a video that combines me talking with this presentation. I'm trying to cover all the bases for you guys. And Kara says, that's only for being tracked, right? Yes. If you are being tracked, that's how you do this. And yeah, I will write that up and make it a pin in a minute. Can wood be charged just like crystals? It can be charged. I'm also teaching energy work for this semester, and I will talk about that. It holds a charge a little bit differently than a crystal does, but it can be charged. Anything can be charged. The question becomes, how long will it hold the charge? Some things hold a charge better than other things. Crystals, especially quartz, holds a charge well, skipping ahead, because of its piezoelectric nature. Wood, if it's still alive, holds a charge better. Dried wood, depending on the kind and what you did to it, might hold a charge really, really well, but you might also need to refresh that from time to time. Whew. Whew. How's that? Can Hidden Valley Ranch be charged? Yes, and in fact you can do so while writing a sigil. You can put a sigil on top of your salad and then eat it, and it's delicious and also magic. Morgs gets very excited over the word piezoelectricity. Yeah, we're going to talk about watches. I told you, I really like rocks a whole lot. Rocks are awesome. I adore rocks. Rocks are the best. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, maybe? How do I stop? Stop. There, okay. How can you tell if something still has charge? That's a question of your discernment and whether or not you can feel it or otherwise sense it. If you're the one who charged it, odds are good you can feel the energy that's within it. That's how you know you charged it. So pick it up and touch it. Is it empty? It may need to be refreshed. Rowdy says, I thought about minoring in geology because of my love of rocks. Do it! They're so cool! Rocks are awesome. Rocks are the best. Everyone should minor in geology. You will learn, a geology, even just a simple geology course. If you take geology as an elective, you will learn so much about the world around you. You'll learn about fossils, and I'm not even talking about fossils here, okay? Although they are a kind of rock, and nope. Yeah, that just got added to the list, sorry. Fossils. Because they're so cool. Saber says, how do I charge Tiger's Eye? The same way you charge anything else. Alex says, by using selenite. That could work. Yeah, sure. Jenny says, trilobites are my favorite animals. They have blue blood. It's so cool. So yeah, I want you to take away from crystals this year, or this semester. I want you to walk away from this knowing that the very ground you walk upon is magic. It's all magic. And it's so cool. Echo wants to know the best type of place to buy legitimate crystals. Tune in next week to find out. Kabustu says, don't put Tiger's Eye or selenite in water that you want to drink, because it will make the water dangerous. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of stones and crystals. Have you've seen those water bottles that have like the stone or crystal inside of them? I would only do that with opalite, honestly. That's the only one I would use. Skya says, Etsy has some good shops. Try to buy as close to the point where it got dug out of the ground as you possibly can, so that your money is going more directly to the people who dug it up. Because in some cases, for some of these stones, like watermelon tourmaline, for example, the people who are digging it up are actual literal children going into tiny crevices in muddy ground to pull these rocks out for pennies. Literal pennies per pound for these rocks. So, this is lesson 2. Oh, no, if you're sick, go away. Go ahead and send me a DM. Because we're at the end anyway. It's the hour's over. AC says secondhand exchange could be an option. Yeah, trade them. Buy secondhand, buy them used, get them from a thrift store, buy them from the miners, and pay them what they're worth. This was Crystals 101, Lesson 1 in the Urban Conservatory Discord server. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this recorded class. And if you have any questions, please drop me a message via Discord. Or, the cat says hi. Loudly. It's been an honor teaching you about rocks. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks.